It started the way most endings do, quietly. Not with a scream or a slammed door or a telltale perfume that didn't belong. No, it started with a cough. Just a cough. And a voice message on her phone she didn't mean to play on speaker. I'm not the jealous type. 40 years with Margaret taught me a lot of things. How to fix a leaky roof, how to keep peace during a Thanksgiving with 20 people and one turkey, and how to read her. Really read her. She was my high school sweetheart. We married at 20, raised 2 daughters, 2 dogs, and survived cancer. Hers, not mine. We were solid. At least, I thought we were. Until that voice message. It came while she was cooking. Her phone sat on the kitchen counter. The message auto-played on speaker while she stirred the sauce. I wasn't even paying attention at first. I was reading the sports section, grumbling about the Braves. Then I heard it. A man's voice. Familiar. Too familiar. Hey, babe, last night was, well, unforgettable. Same time next week, babe? I looked up. Margaret's face froze. She fumbled with the phone, dropped a spoon, and mumbled something about a spam message. My gut told me it wasn't spam. We've been through hard seasons before. Financial stress, her breast cancer, the loss of her mother, but I never, not once, suspected infidelity. It wasn't in our playbook. We were church folk. We taught Sunday school together. But that night, after she went to bed early, I sat in the living room with her phone in my hand. It wasn't locked. It never had been. That's how much I trusted her. The messages were all there, 6 months' worth. I scrolled until my eyes blurred. There were photos, plans, confessions, jokes about me, cruel juvenile jokes, things like, he wouldn't notice if I dyed my hair green, and he still tucks in his shirt like it's night. It wasn't just anyone. It was Richard, my old friend, my best man at our wedding. Richard, who helped me build our deck. Richard, who was godfather to our first daughter. Richard, who hugged me at my retirement party and said, "You've done good, Charlie, real good." I felt my stomach turn. I read on. Every message dug deeper. The affair wasn't new. It had history. Apparently, it began during Margaret's chemo, a time when I was so focused on keeping her alive, I didn't see what was happening right under my nose. He called her Maggie. No one called her that but me. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't confront her either, not yet. I needed to understand. I needed to know if I had missed something, if I had driven her to this. My therapist, I started seeing one 2 years ago after a panic attack, once said, "We build stories in our heads. Sometimes the truth doesn't match." I had to see the truth for myself. The next morning, I acted like nothing happened. I made coffee, kissed her cheek. She looked tired, guilty, maybe, or maybe that was just me projecting. I started watching, listening, observing the woman I had known since we were teenagers. And slowly, cracks began to appear in the image I had held sacred for so long. Margaret started taking more walks. She suddenly cared about makeup again. She hummed in the kitchen, not our songs, but something new, something foreign. Then came the day she forgot our anniversary. 40 years, 40. She said she had a headache, said she'd make it up to me, that she was tired. I said nothing. I took myself out to dinner and ordered the lasagna she hated. While I ate, I drafted a plan. I wasn't going to explode. I wasn't going to scream. I was going to gather every piece of truth. I wanted it to be undeniable, irrefutable. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a surgical removal of our history. I began documenting everything. Screenshots, dates, locations, receipts. I even borrowed my neighbor's old drone, said I was bird watching. Turns out, Margaret and Richard met every Thursday at a little cabin in the woods. They signed the logbook as M&R, like some teenage lovers. I took photos, videos, even audio. I wanted to hate her. I wanted to hate him. But mostly, I just hated how much I still loved her. And that, perhaps, was the cruelest part of it all. I couldn't sleep all night, not after that morning. The moment she left my apartment, the silence swallowed me whole. I stood at the window, watching the gray dawn filter through blinds, my hands shaking from coffee I didn't drink. My stomach twisted, not from hunger, but from the ache of betrayal. It was her name I couldn't stop hearing. The woman from my past, the one who haunted me since high school. Her voice on his phone, the same soft tone, mocking like she'd never left. Part of me wanted to call out to the empty room, scream at the walls. I knew she never changed. But the other part said nothing. Too stunned, too furious, too shattered. He called 6 times that morning. I ignored him all day. I didn't want to hear the words that might come, the apologies, the tears. How could I listen? How could I believe him after this? Instead, I went to work, moving through the routine like a ghost, my heart pounding every time my phone buzzed. By noon, I'd decided I'm done being passive. Time to take back control. I went straight to the women's restroom and sent her a message. It wasn't polite. It was deliberate. Stop. Leave him. Leave us alone. I knew it was risky, just another scene in this mess, but I felt empowered for the first time in weeks. I wanted her to know I was awake now, even if she'd never cared before. No reply. Of course not. That afternoon at work, I caught myself staring at the door. Would she show up? Would he chase after her? Would friends notice the shape of betrayal forming around us? I tried to focus. Emails, reports, meetings, but every word he'd said in private whisper sessions with her filled my mind. When I logged in that evening, his message waited. Please, let's talk. I stared at it for hours. Each time I almost opened it, my finger hovered and my chest clenched. Finally, I saw a reply from her instead. He doesn't deserve you either. Walk away while you can. I laughed bitterly. Then his message came again, this time at midnight. I love her. My breath caught, not us, not you, her. The weight of 3 words sunk in, cold and unforgiving. I closed my laptop, feeling the weight of every broken promise in the room. The next morning, his call rang through as soon as my eyes opened. My mind flashed. He slept at my place last night? No, just emptiness and his scent lingering on the pillowcase I refused to wash. That was my answer. I didn't answer. He called again, then texted, I know I messed up. I need you. Please. Here's the truth. I saw through him. I knew he'd heard from her, smelled her perfume, held her while she whispered my name with that taunt. He thought he could have both. But there's no in-between in heartbreak. I texted, let's meet. And by noon, we were face to face in a cafe, the place where we first said, I love you. She haunted us through the window, another woman walking inside briefly, then gone. He didn't look healthy, not physically, but morally. His face had grown thinner and more haunted in the past weeks. He wanted to explain, to justify, to beg. His eyes were full of tears, but my voice stayed calm. "Are you in love with her?" He looked away, then back. I don't know. "Do you want her to leave me?" He swallowed. "I thought I could have both." "You can't," I said. Then I found out he never broke it off with me. The lies still trickled out. They were discreet, and in his words, I realized he didn't just want her. He wanted the thrill, the secret, the feeling of power to break our life and drag her into ours. My throat tightened. "She's not interested anymore. She's moved on." He blinked. "She's moved on." Those words were pure gold. I watched him crumble. The tension drained from his shoulders. For the first time, I stopped hating him entirely and started pitying him, because the man I'd loved was gone, replaced by someone hungry for drama, for attention, for destruction. That night, a thunderstorm hit. I watched lightning crack across the sky from my balcony, then felt my phone vibrate in my pocket. It was her, the bully, just one message. "You think this is over? You'll regret this." I showed him the text. He paled. This was no game. This was war. I deleted the message. "No more," I said firmly. "I won." But in my gut, I felt her still lurking, a shadow crouching outside our crumbling little castle. The next day I met with a lawyer. I'd saved money, small but enough. I needed legal clarity. Could I protect what was mine, what we shared? The apartment was in both names, the savings too. I felt the first taste of fear, but it was laced with determination. I also arranged a face-to-face meeting with her. If she was going to tear apart my life, I'd meet her face-to-face. I needed to see what I was really fighting. I made sure it was public. A cafe with cameras, witnesses, something to temper her venom. He was silent when I told him, but he followed. Both of us would go. I needed him there as a witness to my strength. That evening, we walked through a street wet with rain to meet her. She was already there. Too calm, too pretty, too practiced. She wore a chic coat, her eyes cold. I saw no remorse, just challenge. She smiled when she saw us. "So dramatic," she said quietly. "Should I apologize? For what?" My heart thundered with anger. It was her tone that cut deepest. She continued, "I love him. Wasn't me who started with you. I didn't ask for your life. I asked for him." He swayed. I felt a flicker of doubt. But I forced steadiness, leveled my gaze. "You started with her soul," I said. "You ruined her peace." She shrugged. He closed his eyes. She turned to me. "You think this embarrasses me?" She left. "She won't beg. You win, but I survived." I felt my breath catch. She was stronger than me, stronger than him. I realized this wasn't just about love. It was about pain. The call from Richard's wife changed everything. Her name was Diane, and I hadn't heard her voice in nearly a year. When we used to get together, backyard barbecues, Christmas parties, 4th of July fireworks, she was always the quiet one, reserved, polite to a fault. But that day, she wasn't polite. She was furious. "I found a letter," she said, "handwritten from your wife." I froze. Margaret, writing letters? She hadn't handwritten anything since she stopped sending birthday cards in 2008. "It was in his coat pocket," Diane continued. "I wasn't snooping. I was looking for his keys. I didn't know what to do. But then I remembered something he said months ago. He said Charlie would never see it coming. I didn't think anything of it then. Her voice cracked. I could tell that she was trying to hold herself together. I read the letter, Charlie, and I think this has been going on a lot longer than either of us realized. We agreed to meet the next morning at a local diner. I chose a booth in the back. Diane looked tired, not just sleep-deprived, but emotionally drained. She slid the letter across the table. I didn't want to touch it at first. I stared at it like it was a snake about to strike, but then I unfolded the paper. The handwriting was unmistakably Margaret's, looping, graceful, cursive. "Dear R," it began. "I can't stop thinking about Thursday, about the way you looked at me, the way you held me after. I feel alive again. I feel like myself. Not the wife, not the mother, not the patient, but me. You make me feel like I matter, like I'm seen." She went on to talk about me, always in past tense. "Charlie was good to me. He really was, but he stopped looking at me years ago after my treatments. He just saw a survivor, not a woman." That one hit hard. There was more, pages more, details about their meetings, her doubts, her fantasies of starting over. She mentioned the cabin. She mentioned a vacation, just the two of them, to test the waters. "I think he suspects something," she wrote. "He's been quieter lately, but he hasn't said anything. Maybe he doesn't care anymore." I couldn't breathe. Diane reached across the table and touched my hand. It was the first kindness I'd felt in weeks. "I don't know what to do," she said, "but I couldn't let you walk blind into this." I thanked her, paid for her coffee, and drove home in silence. I didn't go inside right away. I sat in the driveway staring at our house, the shutters I painted last fall, the rose bushes Margaret loved, the porch swing we built together. It all felt like a lie. But then something inside me shifted. I wasn't going to fall apart. I wasn't going to beg or cry or scream. I was going to end it on my terms. Pulled out the folder I'd been building, printed copies of the messages, photos, screenshots, drone footage, Margaret's letter, everything. And then I wrote a letter of my own. It began, "To the woman I thought I knew." I didn't write it to shame her. I didn't even write it out of anger. I wrote it because I needed her to understand what she had destroyed. Not just a marriage, but a legacy, a history. I told her about the first time I saw her in 10th grade, wearing a green sweater. How she looked at me like I wasn't invisible. How that moment carried me through years of insecurity. I told her how I stayed up nights after her diagnosis, reading medical journals and praying silently at the foot of our bed. I reminded her of our daughters, of our anniversaries, of the night she cried after watching The Notebook and said she hoped we'd die holding hands. And then I ended it with a single line. "You killed us quietly. Now watch how loudly I bury what's left." I sealed the letter, packed the folder, and waited. Thursday came, as always. She left at 1:15 p.m. I waited 10 minutes. Then I followed. This time, I didn't just park nearby. I drove straight to the cabin, parked behind a tree. I watched them through the window, laughing, drinking wine. Then I stepped out of the car, folder in hand. It was time. The air was thick with a kind of tension that words can't cut through. After the call from Linda, Richard's wife, I didn't sleep. I sat in my truck outside the old hardware store we used to go to every Saturday morning, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me tethered to this earth. She knew, not just suspected. She knew. We met the next morning in the park. Neutral ground. It was one of those spring mornings that tried to pretend winter hadn't just been brutal, all bright sky and mocking chirps of birds. Linda looked tired, not the kind of tired a bad night's sleep gives you, but the deep, soul-worn tired that only betrayal can bring. She sat down without a word, pulled a manila envelope from her tote, and placed it on the bench between us. Photos, dates, printed texts, emails. She hadn't just found out. She'd been collecting. I didn't want to believe it, she said, staring at the ground. I thought maybe it was just a midlife thing, a fantasy. Then I found the receipts, the perfume. Her voice cracked when she said perfume, and I realized then that for Linda, this wasn't just a betrayal of marriage. It was a betrayal of womanhood, of dignity. I didn't know how to tell you, she continued. You and Margaret, you two were the example. Everyone always said so. I nodded. I couldn't speak yet. She looked at me then, eyes rimmed red. So what do we do? It was the right question, the question I'd been circling since that voicemail, since the first hint that my world wasn't what I believed. I took a breath. We let them destroy themselves. The plan was simple, cruel in its elegance. I'd been gathering evidence for weeks. Linda had her own archive. Together, we had enough to sink both of them, socially, legally, emotionally. But revenge is best served at the moment of maximum impact. We picked a date. Our oldest daughter's 40th birthday was coming up. There would be a party. Family, friends, people who mattered. The people Margaret pretended to care about while sneaking off to some rental cabin with my best friend. Linda and I met in secret for a few more weeks, comparing notes, organizing a timeline. The more I read, the more I saw that this affair wasn't passion. It was a long, slow erosion of everything sacred. They mocked us, lied about us, built a world where we didn't exist. I even found a list Margaret had written in her journal, a list of reasons why she deserved this. Number 7. Charlie is more like a brother now. That one gutted me. Number 12. Richard sees me. They always say that, when people cheat, that they're seen. But what about the person who stood beside them through chemo, who held their hand when their father died, who helped them bury a dog and plant a tree and start over 3 times? Wasn't I enough? Apparently not, but I wasn't broken. I was reborn. The day of the party arrived like thunder behind the clouds. I wore my best suit, the one I got married in, believe it or not, still fit. Linda came too, invited by our daughter, who had no idea of the storm brewing just beneath the smiles. Margaret looked radiant. She always did when she played hostess. She kissed my cheek and told me she was proud of me for pulling together lately. I smiled. We ate, laughed, and then I asked for everyone's attention. I said I wanted to make a speech. Margaret's eyes sparkled. She thought I was going to praise her. She had no idea. And then I began. I want to talk about love. I began. The room quieted. Glasses stilled. My daughters beamed at me from the couch. I looked at Margaret. Real love. The kind that holds your hair back when you're sick. The kind that works double shifts to pay for your surgery. The kind that stays up all night with a crying baby or a crying spouse. Margaret nodded slightly, her smile growing. And I want to talk about betrayal. Her smile twitched. You could have heard a pin drop. I learned recently that love doesn't always die with fire and fury. Sometimes it's strangled, quietly, slowly, by the person you trust most. I pulled a folder from behind the couch and placed it on the table. The first photo showed Margaret and Richard kissing at the cabin, date stamped, gasps, whispers. Margaret stood up. Charlie, what are you? I'm not done. I pulled out the next photo and the next. I read aloud an excerpt from their messages. Then I handed the envelope to my oldest daughter. These are the people you trusted to babysit your kids, to bless your marriage. She stared at me, then at Margaret. Tears welled. Charlie, please, Margaret whispered. But I wasn't finished. I gestured to Linda, who stood up and said, calm as Sunday morning, Richard won't be joining us today. He's staying with his brother after I threw all his things onto the lawn. The room was silent again. I'm sorry you all had to find out this way, I said, but I needed everyone here to see what love shouldn't look like. Then I walked out. I didn't look back. That night, I slept at a friend's cabin. No memories, no ghosts, just pine trees and wind. The fallout, I learned later, was biblical. Margaret moved out within a week. Linda filed for divorce. Our daughters sided with me. Friends called in shock, some in support, some to apologize for what they should have told me months ago. Margaret emailed, then texted, then showed up at my doorstep. I didn't open the door, not yet. She needed to sit with what she'd done. I was rebuilding, not from the ground up, but from the foundation she tried to bury, and for the first time in months, I could breathe. It was early morning when I stepped onto the balcony of my new apartment. The city's breath stirred in the distance, but all I could focus on was the sunrise painting golden streaks across the horizon. I inhaled deeply. This was more than a view. It was a promise of rebirth. For months, I had been rebuilding myself, emotionally, physically, spiritually. The documents were signed, the divorce final. Margaret had moved out. Richard was gone. Their whispers were now just that, echoes in the past. I'd spent nights reading old emails, burning memories that once shattered me, and waking up ready to greet life again. I returned inside and opened my laptop. The screen showed the latest email from Amanda, my old best friend from college. She was planning a small gathering, a housewarming for me and her newborn son next weekend. The message ended with, "Can't wait to celebrate your new beginning." I smiled. For the first time in a long while, it felt like there was something to celebrate. The next day, I met with my lawyer to discuss financials, custody, and life post-divorce. It felt procedural, neutral, but necessary. I signed the final papers. As I did, I realized it wasn't just ink drying. Each signature was me reclaiming pieces of my dignity, my voice, my freedom. Minutes after, I called Michael, my therapist. I did it, I said simply. He paused. It's a milestone, he acknowledged gently. Do you feel different? Yes, I confessed. Still healing. Still afraid sometimes, but different. Over the next few weeks, I continued therapy, exercised daily, and made time for small joys, cooking new recipes, wandering bookstores, reconnecting with friends who reminded me of who I was before betrayal. One afternoon, as light filtered through my living room window, I received a message from a mutual acquaintance. Margaret left town, no forwarding address. I paused, considering. I typed a short response, understood, then deleted the thread. Closure doesn't always need conversation. Sometimes it's simply letting go. 3 months later, I stood at Amanda's back porch. Laughter and soft chatter filled the warm air. Through the circle of friends, I spotted someone new, quiet, with kind eyes. Her name was Nina, a school teacher recently moved from another state. We talked about books, dogs, and our shared love of early morning coffees. I don't know where this will go, and that's okay. For the first time, I'm open to life again. Tonight, I sat in my living room, the apartment filled with soft lamplight. I drew a deep breath, then exhaled slowly. Behind me was betrayal, heartbreak, and loss. In front lay life, imperfect, uncertain, but mine to shape. I closed my eyes and whispered, I'm ready. This video ends here, but my story continues. Betrayal nearly broke me. It almost defined me. But instead, I chose to rebuild, to stand taller, to open my heart again. If you're watching, remember this. Pain ends, hope begins. A new dawn follows every dark night. You don't have to rush it, and you certainly don't have to face it alone. Thank you for walking this journey with me. If this story resonated, if you ever found yourself lost and needing a lifeline, know that today can be your day to start again.